Early civilizations in Central America. The first signs of civilization in Mesoamerica appeared at the end of the second millennium BCE with the emergence of what is called Olmec culture in the hot and swampy lowlands along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, south of Veracruz. The Olmecs civilization was characterized by intensive agriculture along the muddy riverbanks in the area and by the carving of stone ornaments, tools, and monuments at sites such as San Lorenzo and La Venta. The site at La Venta contains a ceremonial precinct with a 30-foot-high earthen pyramid, the largest of its date in all of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs and the Olmec peoples organized a widespread trading network, carried on religious rituals, and devised an as yet undeciphered system of hieroglyphics that is similar in some respects to the latter Mayan writing. We will discuss Mayan hieroglyphs and calendars later. And this writing that is undeciphered system and similar in some respects to Mayan writing may be the ancestor of the first true writing systems in the Americas. Olmec society apparently consisted of several classes, including a class of skilled artisans who produced a series of massive stone heads, some of which are more than 10 feet high. Of course, the Olmec people supported themselves primarily by cultivating crops such as corn and beans, but also engaged in fishing and hunting as well. The Olmecs apparently played a ceremonial game on a stone ball court, a ritual that would later be widely practiced throughout the region. Of course, that of the Maya. The ball was made from the sap of a local rubber tree, and thus providing the name Olmec, or people of the land of rubber. Trade between the Olmecs and their neighbors was apparently quite extensive, and rubber was one of the products most desired by peoples in nearby regions. It was used not only for the manufacture of balls, but also for rubber bands and footwear, as the Olmec learned how to mix the raw latex, the sap of the rubber tree, with other ingredients in order to make it more supple. Eventually, Olmec civilization began to decline, and it apparently collapsed around the 4th century BCE. During its heyday, however, it extended from Mexico City to El Salvador, and perhaps to the shores of the Pacific Ocean. And so we have from there between La Venta and Palenque, and going through San Lorenzo over to Veracruz. Right there, suspending the Gulf of Mexico. And over to the east, we'll have Copan and Tikal, and then up toward the Tikal, central Copan, southern. Toward the north, we have the Chichen Itza, as well as Coba. To the left, we will venture to talk about the Zapotecs, as well as the Aztec to the far west. Concerning the Zapotecs, parallel developments were occurring at Monte Alban, on a hillside overlooking the modern city of Oaxaca in central Mexico. Around the middle of the first millennium BCE, the Zapotec peoples created an extensive civilization that flourished for several hundred years in the highlands. Like the Olmec sites, Monte Alban contains a number of temples and pyramids, but they are located in much more awesome surroundings on a massive stone terrace atop a 1,200-foot-high mountain overlooking the Oaxaca Valley. The majority of the population, estimated at about 20,000, dwelled on terraces cut into the sides of the mountain, known to local residents as Daniban, or Sacred Mountain. The government at Monte Alban was apparently theocratic, with an elite class of nobles and priests ruling over a population composed primarily of farmers and artisans. Like the Olmecs, the Zapotecs devised a written language that has not been deciphered yet. The Zapotec society and culture survived for several centuries following the collapse of the Olmecs, but Monte Alban was abandoned before or abandoned for unknown reasons in the late 8th century CE. A lot of mystery that still goes around these first peoples. Next, we will go to Teotihuacan, the capital city of an early state 30 miles northwest of Mexico City that arose around the 3rd century BCE. That will be our next reading, will be on the metropolis of Teotihuacan. And we will go over the Olmecs as well. But I might as well just go ahead and go over it anyways. So, the first major metropolis in Mesoamerica was the city of Teotihuacan, capital of an early state, again 30 miles northeast of Mexico City, that arose around the 3rd century BCE, and flourished for nearly a millennium until it collapsed under mysterious circumstances about 800 CE. Along the main thoroughfare were temples and palaces, all thus not dominated by the massive Pyramid of the Sun, under which archaeologists have discovered the remains of sacrificial victims, probably put to death during the dedication of the structure. In the vicinity are the remains of a large market where goods from distant regions, as well as agricultural produce grown by farmers in the vicinity, were exchanged. The products traded included cacao, rubber, feathers, and various types of vegetables, and meat. Pulque, a liquor extracted from the agave plant, was used in religious ceremonies. An obsidian mine nearby may explain the location of the city. Obsidian is a volcanic glass that was prized in Mesoamerica for use in tools, mirrors, and the blades of sacrificial knives. Most of the city consisted of one-story stucco apartments compounds. Some were as large as 35,000 square feet, sufficient to house more than 100 people. Each apartment was divided into several rooms, and the compounds were covered by flat roofs made of wooden beams, poles, and stucco. The compounds were separated by wide streets laid out on a rectangular grid, were entered through narrow alleys. Living in the fertile valley of Mexico, an upland plateau surrounded by magnificent snow-capped mountains, the inhabitants of Teotihuacan probably obtained the bulk of their wealth from agriculture. At that time, the valley floor was filled with swampy lakes containing the water runoff from the surrounding mountains. The combination of fertile soil and adequate water made the valley one of the richest farming areas in Mesoamerica. Sometime during the 8th century CE, for unknown reasons, the wealth and power of the city began to decline, and eventually its ruling class departed, with the priests carrying stone images of local deities on their backs. The next 2 centuries were a time of troubles throughout the region as principalities fought over limited farmland. The problem was latter compounded when peoples from surrounding areas, attracted by the rich farmlands, migrated into the Valley of Mexico and began to compete for territory with small city-states already established there. As the local population expanded, farmers began to engage in more intensive agriculture. They drained the lakes to build chinampas, or swampy islands crisscrossed by canals that provide water for their crops and easy transportation to local markets for their excess produce. The Olmecs, mother culture or first among equals. What were the relations among these early societies in Mesoamerica? Trade contacts were quite active as the Olmecs exported rubber to their neighbors in exchange for salt and obsidian. During its heyday, Olmec influence extended throughout the region, leading some historians to surmise that it was a mother culture, much as the Shang dynasty was once thought to be in ancient China. A 7th century BCE pyramid recently unearthed in the southern Mexican states of Chiapas contained tomb objects that bore some resemblance to counterparts in the Olmec site at La Venta, but also displayed characteristics unique to the Zoque culture that was prevalent in that region at the time. Some scholars point to such indigenous elements to suggest that perhaps the Olmec were merely first among equals. However, the issue has not yet been resolved.